Hello there and welcome back to the channel, where curiosity drifts gently like a paper boat and science takes the quietest route to your dreams. Tonight, we're descending into waters where legends swim in flesh and blood, a place where the last great monsters of Earth still glide through darkness. Tentacles longer than telephone poles, eyes larger than dinner plates, intelligence vast and alien. This isn't mythology, though it lived there for centuries. This is the story of Archaeopteryx ducks, the giant squid. Picture this. Somewhere beneath the waves, in waters so deep that sunlight has never touched them, a creature the length of a school bus drifts silently through the black. Its 8 arms ripple with chromatophores, cells that flash colors we have no names for. Its 2 feeding tentacles stretch into the void, tasting chemical traces of prey. And those eyes, the largest in the animal kingdom, scan the darkness for movement, for opportunity, for threats. This is not science fiction. This is Tuesday afternoon in the deep Atlantic. For over 2,000 years, sailors spoke of sea monsters, with tentacles that could crush ships. Scientists dismissed these tales as fantasy born of fear and fog. Then, in 2004, we finally met them on their own terms. What we found was more extraordinary than any myth. A creature of such alien intelligence and beauty that it rewrote our understanding of what life could become in the deep. So where are you listening from tonight? And what time is it where you are? Perhaps you're settled into bed as the day fades, or maybe you're somewhere the morning is just beginning. It's such a gift to have you here with us in this moment, sharing this journey into the realm of tentacles and time. Let's dive together into these waters where monsters are real, and reality is more wondrous than any dream. Long before scientists had names for the creatures of the deep, sailors had stories whispered in taverns from Norway to Japan, tales that made grown men cross themselves and avoid certain waters when the moon was dark. They spoke of arms that could wrap around a ship's mast, of eyes that glowed like lanterns in the fog, of beasts so vast they were mistaken for islands until they moved. In Norse mythology, the kraken slumbered on the ocean floor, a creature so enormous that when it stirred, whirlpools formed above it. Sailors described it as an island that would suddenly sprout tentacles, dragging entire vessels into the depths. The old sagas spoke of arms thick as ship masts and longer than cathedral spires, reaching up from darkness to claim the unwary. Across the world in Japan, fishermen told of the umibozu, shadowy giants that rose from the depths on calm nights. These weren't quite squid in the telling, but something more ethereal, spirits of the deep that could take many forms. Sometimes tentacled, sometimes merely vast and dark. They were omens of storms to come, or punishment for those who disrespected the sea. The ancient Greeks had their own version. They spoke of the Scylla, a many-armed monster that lurked in narrow straits, snatching sailors from passing ships. While Homer described her with dog heads, later versions gave her the reaching arms of something more familiar to those who worked the Mediterranean waters. What's remarkable is how consistent these stories were across cultures that had no contact with each other. From the Celtic legends of Ichimiaja to the Maori tales of Terutia-Muterangi, nearly every seafaring culture developed myths of enormous tentacled beings. The details varied, but the core remained. Something vast and intelligent lived in the deep places, something with arms that could think and eyes that could see. These weren't just campfire stories. They were warnings, navigation aids, explanations for the unexplainable. When a ship vanished without trace, when strange marks appeared on driftwood, when something massive was glimpsed in heavy seas, the kraken provided an answer. It was mythology, serving as science, story filling the gaps where knowledge ran out. Medieval European maps often included illustrations of sea monsters, massive tentacled beasts coiled around ships or rising from stylized waves. The phrase "here be dragons" became legendary, though the actual monsters drawn were often more cephalopod than reptile. Cartographers weren't just decorating empty spaces, they were recording the collective wisdom of generations of sailors. By the 18th century, these stories began to stratify. Some remained pure myth, growing more fantastic with each tale. Others started to include details that suggested real encounters. Descriptions of sucker marks on whales, of tentacled arms longer than trees, of eyes the size of cartwheels. The line between legend and observation was blurring. Even the word kraken itself tells a story. Derived from the Norwegian krake, meaning something twisted or crooked, it perfectly captures the alien geometry of tentacles. These weren't creatures that fit into familiar categories. They were living contradictions, soft yet powerful, intelligent yet alien, real yet impossible. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect of these myths was how they evolved. Early tales spoke of malevolent destroyers, creatures of pure appetite and rage. Later stories grew more nuanced. Some krakens were described as curious, rather than hostile, investigating ships with what seemed like intelligence, rather than hunger. These weren't mindless beasts, the stories suggested, but thinking beings with their own purposes. The influence of these tales reached far beyond maritime culture. They seeped into literature, art, and the collective unconscious. They gave us a vocabulary for describing the incomprehensible, a framework for imagining intelligence that didn't think like us, long before we understood the sophisticated nervous systems of cephalopods. Mythology had already proposed that tentacles might be capable of thought. Indigenous peoples of the Pacific Northwest carved tentacled beings into totem poles, honoring them as powerful spirits of transformation and knowledge. In their stories, these creatures weren't monsters but teachers, beings who could show humans the deeper mysteries of the ocean. They understood something that European mythology often missed, that the tentacled giants weren't necessarily enemies, but inhabitants of a world parallel to our own. The giant squid lived in human imagination for over 2 millennia before science could prove it existed, and in that long residence in myth, it shaped how we think about the unknown, the deep, the monstrous. It became more than an animal. It became a symbol of everything that lies beyond the edge of our maps, waiting in the dark. Imagine an animal, built like a living submarine, but made of muscle instead of metal. The giant squid is evolution's masterpiece of hydraulic engineering, a creature whose very existence challenges our understanding of what life can become in the deep ocean. Every part of their anatomy tells a story of adaptation to a world without light, where pressure could crush human bones and where the next meal might be months away. Let's begin with those eyes, the largest in the animal kingdom. Each one measures nearly 10 inches across, the size of a dinner plate, with lenses clear as crystal and pupils that can dilate to capture every photon of bioluminescent light. These aren't just big eyes scaled up from smaller creatures, they're precision instruments, evolved specifically for seeing in conditions where human vision would be utterly useless. The retina contains millions of photoreceptors, each one calibrated to detect the faintest glow of deep-sea organisms. But it's the tentacles that truly showcase the alien genius of their design. 8 arms and 2 longer feeding tentacles, each one a marvel of distributed intelligence. Unlike our centralized nervous system, giant squids have neurons running throughout their limbs. Each arm can taste, touch, and react independently, as if the creature had 10 separate brains working in coordination. The suckers that line these arms aren't passive structures. They're sensory organs equipped with chemoreceptors that can distinguish between different types of prey, different chemicals in the water, even different individuals of their own species. The feeding tentacles are engineering marvels in their own right. Normally retracted and hidden, they can shoot out with explosive speed, extending to twice the length of the animal's body in milliseconds. At their tips, clubs lined with rotating hooks and serrated suckers grab prey with a grip stronger than industrial clamps. These aren't just arms, they're precision hunting tools, evolved over millions of years to snatch prey from the darkness. Their skin tells another story entirely. Chromatophores, cells containing pigment granules, can change color faster than human thought. But giant squids don't use this ability for camouflage alone. Scientists believe these color changes might be a form of communication. A visual language flashing through the deep. Red might mean aggression, white could signal submission, and patterns we haven't yet decoded might convey complex information between individuals. The body itself is a study in efficient design. The mantle, that cone-shaped structure that houses the vital organs, works like a biological jet engine. Water flows in through openings around the head, passes over the gills for oxygen extraction, then gets expelled through a funnel with enough force to propel the animal backward at remarkable speeds. When threatened, the giant squid can rocket through the water faster than most fish. Inside that mantle lies a body plan, unlike anything on land. 3 hearts pump blue blood through their system. Two smaller hearts handle circulation to the gills, while the main heart manages the rest of the body. But here's where it gets strange. The main heart stops beating when they swim. This means that vigorous activity actually reduces blood flow to vital organs, which is why giant squids prefer to drift and glide rather than chase prey actively. Their blood itself is alien to us. Instead of iron-based hemoglobin, they use copper-based hemocyanin to carry oxygen. This makes their blood blue and less efficient at oxygen transport than ours. Another reason why they've evolved to be energy misers rather than high-performance athletes. In the low-oxygen environment of the deep sea, this trade-off makes perfect sense. The nervous system reveals perhaps the most remarkable aspect of their design. While they do have a central brain, much of their intelligence is distributed throughout their body. More than half of their neurons are located in their arms, creating a creature that literally thinks with its limbs. Each arm can continue to hunt and feed even when severed from the body, a level of autonomy that challenges our very concept of individual consciousness. Their beak, hidden at the center where all arms meet, is the only hard part of their entire body, made of a material harder than human fingernails. It can crack through the shells of deep-sea crustaceans and the tough flesh of fish. Yet it's surrounded by soft tissue, so perfectly graduated in hardness, that there's no sharp transition that might damage the delicate throat. This is a creature built for a world we can barely imagine, where every adaptation serves multiple purposes, and where the line between body and mind blurs into something entirely alien, yet entirely perfect for its environment. How large is a giant squid? It's a question that seems simple until you realize we're trying to measure a creature made almost entirely of soft tissue, one that lives in crushing depths and dies the moment it reaches the surface. Every measurement we have comes with caveats, estimates, and the humbling reminder that the ocean still guards its biggest secrets. The confusion begins with how we measure them. Scientists distinguish between total length and mantle length, and the difference matters enormously. The mantle is the main body, that torpedo-shaped structure that houses the organs. For most specimens, this measures between 6 and 10 feet. But total length includes those extraordinary tentacles, and that's where the numbers become truly impressive. The largest confirmed giant squid specimen was found in Antarctica in 2007. When fully extended, this female measured 43 feet from the tip of her mantle to the end of her tentacles. But here's the challenge. Soft tissue shrinks dramatically when preserved, and tentacles can stretch or contract depending on the animal's condition when found. A living giant squid might be significantly larger than any preserved specimen suggests. Sexual dimorphism adds another layer of complexity to size estimates. Female giant squids grow substantially larger than males, sometimes twice the size. This isn't unusual among cephalopods, but it means that any discussion of maximum size must specify which sex we're discussing. The largest males rarely exceed 25 feet in total length, while females can reach dimensions that would have seemed impossible to early marine biologists. The eyes offer a more reliable measure of potential size. Since eye diameter correlates strongly with body size in squids, scientists can estimate total length from eye measurements alone. The largest recorded giant squid eyes measured nearly 11 inches across, suggesting animals that might have reached 50 feet in total length. But these are extrapolations, educated guesses based on proportional relationships observed in smaller specimens. Weight presents its own mysteries. The Antarctic specimen mentioned earlier weighed nearly 1,100 pounds, but this was after partial decomposition and preservation. A healthy living giant squid of similar size might weigh significantly more. Some estimates suggest the largest females could exceed 1,500 pounds, making them among the heaviest invertebrates on Earth. The tentacles themselves contribute disproportionately to total length measurements. The feeding tentacles can extend to more than twice the length of the mantle, meaning an animal with a 10-foot body might have tentacles reaching 20 feet or more. But these aren't rigid structures. They're muscular, flexible, constantly changing length as the animal moves and hunts. Growth rates remain largely mysterious. We know giant squids are short-lived, probably surviving only 1 to 2 years in the wild. This means they must grow at extraordinary rates to reach their adult size, possibly gaining several feet in length each month during their peak growth period. But without the ability to observe living animals over time, these estimates remain speculative. Beached specimens, our primary source of size data, come with inherent problems. These animals are often sick, injured, or dying when they strand. Their tissues may be swollen or contracted. Their tentacles might be damaged or incomplete. We're essentially trying to understand the maximum size of a species based on its most compromised individuals. The romantic notion of squids, large enough to sink ships, perpetuated by stories of the kraken, probably exceeds biological reality. The largest confirmed specimens, impressive as they are, fall short of the 100-foot monsters of legend. But the ocean is vast, and our sampling is limited. The largest giant squid might still be out there, gliding through abyssal depths we've never explored. Recent genetic studies suggest there might be regional variations in size, with some populations growing larger than others, depending on local environmental conditions. Pacific specimens might differ from Atlantic ones, and southern populations might reach different maximum sizes than northern ones. We're still mapping these variations. The truth is that measuring the giant squid is like trying to measure a cloud. We can estimate, extrapolate, and compare, but the living animal remains beyond our direct observation. Until we can study healthy giant squids in their natural habitat, the question of their maximum size will remain one of the ocean's most tantalizing mysteries. What does it mean to be intelligent when your brain is spread throughout your body like a neural constellation? The giant squid possesses a form of consciousness so alien to our own that studying it challenges everything we thought we knew about minds, memory, and what it means to think. Their nervous system contains over 500 million neurons, more than a dog, distributed in ways that defy our centralized understanding of intelligence. While humans concentrate most neural activity in our heads, giant squids scatter theirs throughout their bodies. 2/3 of their neurons live in their arms, creating what scientists call a distributed intelligence network. Each tentacle can taste, touch, learn and remember independently, yet somehow coordinate with the others in seamless unity. This isn't simply having smart arms, it's having arms that think. When a giant squid reaches into a crevice to hunt, that arm makes autonomous decisions about what to pursue, how to grasp it, whether it's food or threat. The arm reports back to the central brain, but it doesn't wait for permission to act. In essence, a giant squid is less a single intelligent animal than a democracy of intelligent body parts working together. The central brain, located between the eyes, handles high-level coordination and processing visual information from those massive eyes. But even this brain is structured differently from ours. Where human brains have clear regions dedicated to specific functions, cephalopod brains show more integrated processing, memory, decision-making and sensory analysis blend together in ways we're still trying to understand. Memory formation in giant squids appears to work through multiple systems simultaneously. Short-term memories might be stored in the arms themselves, allowing them to remember the texture and chemical signature of recent prey. Long-term memories form in the central brain, but even these seem to be distributed across neural networks rather than localized in specific regions. Their learning abilities extend beyond simple conditioning. Laboratory studies of smaller cephalopods reveal sophisticated problem-solving skills, opening complex containers, navigating mazes, even using tools. Giant squids, with their vastly larger neural networks, likely possess even more advanced cognitive abilities. They can probably recognize individual prey species, remember productive hunting grounds, and adapt their strategies based on experience. But perhaps most intriguingly, they show evidence of what scientists call episodic-like memory. This is the ability to remember not just what happened, but when and where it happened. For a giant squid, this might mean remembering that sperm whales frequent certain waters at specific times of year, or that particular types of fish gather at certain depths during seasonal migrations. The speed of their neural processing is remarkable. Information travels through their nervous system at rates comparable to vertebrates, despite the different architecture. When a giant squid decides to flee from a predator, that decision ripples through hundreds of millions of neurons in milliseconds, coordinating the complex muscle contractions needed for jet propulsion. Their arms don't just think independently, they communicate with each other through both neural connections and chemical signals. When one arm encounters prey, it can alert the others through a cascade of neural and chemical messages. The arms can even coordinate complex manipulative tasks, working together like the fingers of an invisible hand. Social intelligence remains one of the greatest mysteries. Giant squids are generally solitary, but they must interact during mating. The complexity of their chromatophore displays suggests a sophisticated visual communication system. These color changes happen faster than human speech, creating what might be an entirely visual language flashing across their skin. Pain and emotion in giant squids present philosophical puzzles. They clearly respond to harmful stimuli and show stress behaviors when threatened. But do they experience anything analogous to what we call suffering or fear? Their distributed nervous system might create forms of awareness we can't easily categorize as conscious or unconscious. The question of self-awareness remains open. Some laboratory cephalopods show behavior suggesting they recognize themselves as distinct from their environment. They can learn to manipulate objects to achieve goals, suggesting some understanding of cause and effect. Whether giant squids possess this level of self-reflection, we simply don't know. Their intelligence evolved along a completely different path from vertebrate intelligence, representing what scientists call convergent evolution of cognition. This means that intelligence itself might be more inevitable than we previously thought, arising independently whenever complex neural networks reach critical thresholds of connectivity and processing power. In the darkness of the deep ocean, where survival depends on split-second decisions and perfect coordination between multiple thinking limbs, the giant squid has evolved a form of consciousness that challenges our definitions of mind itself. In the midnight zone of the ocean, where no sunlight has ever penetrated, the giant squid has evolved into one of nature's most sophisticated predators. Their hunting strategies reveal an intelligence shaped by scarcity, where every calorie counts and failure to catch prey might mean weeks without food. Giant squids are ambush predators, masters of the patient hunt. They drift through the water column with minimal movement, conserving energy while their massive eyes scan for the telltale bioluminescent flashes of potential prey. Their hunting technique relies on stealth and explosive speed, rather than endurance, perfectly suited to an environment where energy is precious. When prey approaches, the attack unfolds in milliseconds. Those feeding tentacles, normally retracted and hidden, shoot outward with hydraulic force. The tentacle clubs at their tips bristle with rotating hooks and serrated suckers that can pivot independently to secure the most effective grip. Once grasped, prey rarely escapes. The tentacles retract, drawing the victim toward the waiting arms, and that hidden beat. Their diet consists primarily of deep-sea fish, smaller squids, and crustaceans. Stomach content analysis from stranded specimens reveals lanternfish, deep-sea hake, and various species of smaller cephalopods. But perhaps most remarkably, they also hunt other large predators. Juvenile giant squids have been found in the stomachs of adult giant squids, suggesting either cannibalism or scavenging behavior. The energy economics of deep-sea hunting demand efficiency. Giant squids cannot afford to chase prey across vast distances. Instead, they position themselves along migration routes, particularly areas where the deep scattering layer rises toward the surface each night. This massive migration of small organisms provides concentrated hunting opportunities that giant squids have learned to exploit. Their relationship with sperm whales represents one of nature's most epic predator-prey dynamics. Adult giant squids serve as primary food sources for these massive marine mammals, but the relationship is far from one-sided. Sperm whales bear circular scars from giant squid suckers, evidence of struggles that can last for hours in the crushing depths. These battles occur at depths exceeding 3,000 feet, where both predator and prey are operating at the limits of their physiological capabilities. Sperm whales must hold their breath for over an hour while hunting, while giant squids face predators that outweigh them by 10 to 1. The scars found on whales suggest that giant squids don't surrender easily, using their powerful arms and sharp hooks to defend themselves. Hunting success rates for giant squids remain largely unknown, but the sparse nature of deep-sea ecosystems suggests they must be highly efficient when opportunities arise. Their sit-and-wait strategy minimizes energy expenditure between meals, allowing them to survive extended periods without feeding. The giant squid's role in deep-sea food webs extends beyond simple predation. As both predator and prey, they serve as crucial links between different trophic levels. They transport nutrients from the deep scattering layer to greater depths when they descend after feeding, and their own bodies provide massive nutritional windfalls for scavengers when they die. Chemical communication plays a vital role in their hunting ecology. Giant squids can detect amino acids and other chemical traces in the water, allowing them to track wounded or stressed prey across considerable distances. Their arms constantly taste the water, analyzing chemical gradients that might lead to food. Seasonal variations in prey availability likely influence giant squid distribution and behavior. They may migrate vertically through the water column following prey movements, or concentrate in areas where oceanographic features create reliable feeding opportunities. The Humboldt Current and other upwelling zones appear to support higher giant squid populations, suggesting they track nutrient-rich waters. Their hunting success depends heavily on their extraordinary sensory capabilities. Those massive eyes can detect bioluminescent displays from remarkable distances, while their arms provide tactile and chemical information about their immediate environment. This multisensory approach allows them to hunt effectively in conditions where most predators would be helpless. The sparse nature of their ecosystem means that giant squids must be opportunistic feeders, capable of taking advantage of any available food source. This flexibility has likely contributed to their success in the nutrient-poor depths where they make their home, turning them into the ocean's most patient and efficient deep-sea hunters. In the crushing darkness of the deep ocean, where the pressure could flatten a human instantly, giant squids perform one of nature's most mysterious rituals. Their reproduction remains shrouded in secrecy, a dance of titans that few human eyes have ever witnessed, and fewer still have understood. Giant squids reach sexual maturity surprisingly quickly for such massive animals, probably within their first year of life. This rapid development makes sense when you consider their brief lifespan. They live fast and reproduce once, pouring all their energy into a single reproductive event that marks both the culmination and end of their existence. The mating process itself defies easy description. Unlike many marine animals that simply release eggs and sperm into the water and hope for the best, giant squids engage in complex courtship behaviors. Males must approach females carefully, using their chromatophore displays to signal their intention. These color patterns flashing across their skin like alien semaphore might communicate species identity, sexual readiness, or individual recognition. The male faces a deadly challenge during mating. Female giant squids are significantly larger than males, sometimes twice the size, and they're powerful predators with no particular reason to distinguish between a potential mate and a potential meal. The male must somehow signal that he's a suitor, not sustenance, all while navigating the female's 8 muscular arms and 2 feeding tentacles. When mating occurs, the male uses a specialized arm called a hectocotylus to transfer packets of sperm called spermatophores to the female. This arm, modified specifically for reproduction, can actually detach from the male's body during the process. Early scientists who found these severed arms didn't realize they were looking at reproductive organs and initially classified them as separate parasitic worms. The female stores these spermatophores in special receptacles until she's ready to fertilize her eggs. She may mate with multiple males, storing sperm from different partners, and potentially using genetic diversity to increase her offspring's chances of survival in the harsh deep-sea environment. Egg-laying represents the female's final act. She produces thousands of large, transparent eggs, each one about the size of a small marble. These eggs are remarkable for their size among marine invertebrates, suggesting that the young receive substantial nutritional investment from their mother. The eggs are laid in gelatinous masses that drift through the water column, vulnerable to predators and ocean currents. Unlike many marine species, giant squid females appear to provide no parental care after laying their eggs. Once the reproductive act is complete, both parents die, their bodies providing nutrients for the deep-sea ecosystem they've inhabited. This reproductive strategy, called semal parity, is relatively rare among large marine animals, but makes sense in an environment where survival is challenging and resources are scarce. The developing embryos face tremendous challenges. They must survive in the open ocean without protection, avoiding predators while developing the complex body systems that will allow them to hunt and survive as adults. The mortality rate during this vulnerable period is probably extremely high, which explains why females produce so many eggs. Juvenile giant squids remain one of the great mysteries of marine biology. Very few young specimens have ever been found, leading scientists to wonder where and how they develop. They may inhabit different depths than adults, perhaps growing up in the slightly warmer, more nutrient-rich waters of the upper ocean before descending to the abyss as they mature. Growth rates during the juvenile period must be extraordinary. To reach adult size within a year or two, young giant squids probably double their length every few months. This rapid growth requires enormous amounts of food, suggesting that juveniles might feed on different prey than adults, or inhabit areas with higher prey density. The genetic implications of their reproductive strategy are profound. With no overlap between generations and potentially high mortality rates, giant squid populations might be more vulnerable to environmental changes than longer-lived species. Each generation must successfully navigate the challenges of deep-sea life without guidance from experienced adults. Their brief lives burn bright and fast, concentrated into a single year or two of growth, hunting and reproduction before the inevitable end. In the perpetual darkness of the deep ocean, this dance of giants continues, generation after generation, as mysterious today as it was when sailors first whispered of krakens in the deep. For centuries, giant squids existed in that liminal space between myth and reality, leaving behind only tantalizing clues of their existence: tentacle fragments in whale stomachs, sucker scars on sperm whale skin, occasional specimens washing up on remote beaches already decomposing beyond recognition. The living animal remained a ghost, haunting the edges of marine science until technology finally allowed us to meet these creatures on their own terms. The first confirmed giant squid specimens came from an unlikely source: the stomachs of sperm whales. In the 1800s, whalers began finding large tentacle fragments and beaks during their harvesting operations. These remains proved that something massive with tentacles lived in the deep ocean, but they provided no insight into the living animal's behavior, appearance, or ecology. Beach strandings offered the next glimpse. Throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries, giant squid carcasses occasionally washed ashore, from Newfoundland to New Zealand. These specimens, though valuable to science, were often badly decomposed or damaged by their journey to shore. They told us about size and anatomy, but nothing about how these creatures lived in their natural habitat. The breakthrough came in 2004, when Japanese researchers Tsunami Kubadera and Kyuichi Mori achieved what marine biologists had dreamed of for generations. Using a baited camera system deployed at a depth of 3,000 feet in the North Pacific, they captured the first photographs of a living giant squid in its natural environment. The images showed a creature of unexpected grace and power, its arms flowing through the water with alien elegance. That first encounter lasted only minutes, but it revolutionized our understanding. The squid was actively hunting, not drifting passively, as many scientists had assumed. It moved with purpose and precision, its tentacles extending to investigate the bait with what appeared to be intelligent curiosity. Most remarkably, it seemed unafraid of the camera lights, suggesting these creatures might be naturally curious rather than simply predatory. 3 years later, the same research team achieved an even more remarkable feat. In 2007, they captured the first video footage of a living giant squid. The 24-foot specimen was filmed for over 3 hours as it interacted with their bait system. The footage revealed behaviors no scientist had ever imagined: complex arm movements that suggested sophisticated sensory investigation, color changes that might represent communication or emotional states, and swimming patterns that showed remarkable efficiency and control. The 2012 expedition to the same waters brought even more revelations. This time, researchers managed to attract a giant squid close enough for detailed observation. The animal displayed what appeared to be investigative behavior, carefully examining the research equipment with its arms while maintaining a safe distance with its body. The footage showed chromatophore patterns flashing across its skin, possibly indicating recognition that this strange glowing object was not normal prey. But perhaps the most significant breakthrough came with the development of specialized deep-sea submersibles, equipped with red lights invisible to most deep-sea creatures. Traditional white lights had probably been scaring away giant squids for decades. When researchers switched to red illumination, encounters became more frequent and longer-lasting, allowing for extended observation of natural behaviors. The Architeuthis specimens collected during these encounters revealed surprising details about their physiology. Their ammonia-filled tissues, which provide buoyancy in the deep ocean, made them remarkably fragile when brought to the surface. This explained why historical specimens were often damaged: their delicate body structure, unable to survive the pressure changes of rapid ascent. Each encounter raised new questions, even as it answered old ones. Why were the squids attracted to artificial lights and baits? Were they investigating potential prey, or were they simply curious about unusual objects in their environment? The complexity of their responses suggested intelligence at work, But the brief nature of each encounter left many behaviors unexplained. Modern research techniques have continued to evolve, with environmental DNA sampling now allowing scientists to detect giant squid presence without direct observation. Water samples can reveal genetic material from recently deceased or living squids, helping researchers map their distribution and abundance across ocean basins. Satellite tagging attempts have met with limited success due to the animal's deep water habitat and delicate physiology. But acoustic monitoring has revealed that giant squids might be more vocal than previously thought. Low-frequency sounds detected in deep water correlate with known giant squid habitat, suggesting these creatures might communicate through sound as well as visual displays. The transition from myth to documented reality took over a century of patient scientific work. Each encounter, each specimen, each photograph added pieces to a puzzle that remains far from complete. We've learned enough to confirm that giant squids are real, sophisticated predators with complex behaviors and remarkable adaptation. But we've also learned enough to realize how much we still don't know about these ambassadors from the abyss. To understand the giant squid, you must first understand their realm. They inhabit the bathypelagic zone, that vast middle layer of the ocean, where sunlight has never penetrated, and where the physics of existence operate by entirely different rules than those we know on the surface. This is the midnight zone, stretching from 3,000 feet down to 13,000 feet below the surface. Here, the temperature hovers just above freezing, rarely varying more than a few degrees throughout the year. The pressure increases relentlessly with depth, reaching levels that would instantly crush any surface-dwelling creature. At the depths where giant squids hunt, the pressure exceeds 100 times what we experience at sea level. In this realm of perpetual darkness, light becomes currency. Bioluminescence replaces sunlight as the primary source of illumination, created by living organisms rather than stellar fusion. Giant squids navigate a constellation of living lights, each flash and glow carrying information about prey, predators, or potential mates. The deep ocean sparkles with biological light, shows that put any human fireworks display to shame. The water itself tells a story of ancient journeys. The currents that flow through giant squid habitat carry water that sank at the polar regions decades or even centuries ago. This water is rich in dissolved minerals, but poor in nutrients, creating an environment where every calorie must be carefully conserved. The giant squid's slow metabolism and energy-efficient lifestyle make perfect sense in this context of scarcity. Oxygen levels in the midnight zone remain stable, but limited. Another factor that has shaped the giant squid's physiology. Their copper-based blood chemistry, while less efficient than our iron-based system, works adequately in this low-oxygen environment. They've traded metabolic efficiency for the ability to function in conditions that would suffocate most surface animals. The absence of seasonal variation creates a timeless quality to deep-sea life. Giant squids don't experience spring or winter, summer or fall. Instead, they follow the rhythms of the deep scattering layer, that massive daily migration of small organisms that rise toward the surface each night to feed, then descend again before dawn. This biological tide provides the primary temporal structure in their world. Sound travels differently in the deep ocean, faster and farther than it does near the surface. Giant squids may use low-frequency sounds for communication, their calls traveling for miles through the dense water. The ocean carries whispers across vast distances, allowing these solitary creatures to maintain contact across the emptiness of their domain. The seafloor beneath giant squid habitat tells its own story. At these depths, the bottom is covered in a fine sediment called marine snow, the accumulated remains of countless small organisms that have drifted down from the productive surface waters. This sediment carpet provides habitat for bottom-dwelling creatures that occasionally become prey for hunting giant squids. Hydrothermal vents, those underwater geysers that spew superheated water from the Earth's interior, create oases of life in the deep ocean. While giant squids don't live directly at these vents, they may hunt along their margins, taking advantage of the unusual abundance of life that these chemical energy sources support. The vertical migrations that characterize deep-sea ecology create a dynamic three-dimensional habitat. Giant squids may follow their prey through daily vertical journeys of hundreds of feet, tracking the movements of lanternfish, krill, and other organisms that form the backbone of deep-sea food webs. Chemical gradients in the water column provide navigation cues invisible to surface dwellers. Giant squids can taste their way through the ocean, following chemical trails left by prey, or detecting the distinctive signatures of different water masses. Their environment is rich with chemical information that their sensitive arms can interpret and decode. The isolation of the deep ocean has created evolutionary pressures unlike those found anywhere else on Earth. Giant squids have evolved in an environment where encounters with other organisms are rare, where energy is precious, and where the slightest advantage in hunting efficiency can mean the difference between survival and starvation. Ocean currents at depth move slowly but persistently, carrying nutrients, heat, and life across entire ocean basins. Giant squids may ride these currents during their migrations using the ocean's circulation as a highway system that connects distant feeding grounds and breeding areas. This is a world of silence broken only by the distant calls of whales diving to hunt, the click of echolocation, and the subtle sounds of water moving through gills and past swimming bodies. Giant squids have evolved acute hearing to detect these faint audio cues in their nearly silent realm. Their habitat represents one of Earth's last frontiers, a vast three-dimensional wilderness where the rules of surface life don't apply, and where creatures like the giant squid have written their own evolutionary story in the language of tentacles and bioluminescent dreams. To understand the giant squid, we must travel backward through time, following the evolutionary thread that connects these modern monsters to their ancient ancestors. Their story begins not in the deep ocean but in shallow Paleozoic seas, where the first cephalopods emerged as unlikely pioneers of intelligence and innovation. 500 million years ago, the oceans teemed with nautiloids, early cephalopods, whose straight or coiled shells made them the apex predators of their time. Some of these ancient giants reached lengths of 30 feet, their shells serving as both armor and buoyancy control systems. These creatures established the basic cephalopod body plan that would prove so successful: the jet propulsion system, the grasping arms, and the sophisticated eyes that could track prey with remarkable precision. The transition from external shells to internal structures marked a revolutionary moment in cephalopod evolution. Around 400 million years ago, some lineages began reducing their shells, trading protection for mobility. This evolutionary gamble paid off dramatically, freeing these animals to become the agile, intelligent hunters we recognize today. The giant squid's internal gladius, that sword-shaped cartilaginous structure, represents the final remnant of those ancient protective shells. The Mesozoic era saw an explosion of cephalopod diversity. Ammonites ruled the seas with their spiral shells, while belemnites, the direct ancestors of modern squids, developed the internal shells and torpedo-shaped bodies that would define the squid lineage. Fossils from this period show remarkable preservation of soft tissues, revealing that even ancient cephalopods possessed sophisticated chromatophore systems for color change and communication. The evolutionary path to gigantism in squids represents a fascinating example of convergent evolution. Large size has evolved independently multiple times in cephalopod history, suggesting that the deep ocean creates consistent selective pressures favoring giants. The advantages are clear: larger animals can tackle bigger prey, avoid more predators, and store more energy reserves for the demanding challenges of deep-sea reproduction. Giant squids retain many primitive characteristics that connect them to their ancient heritage. Their relatively simple brain organization, while complex by invertebrate standards, lacks the specialized regions found in more derived cephalopods like octopuses. This suggests that giant squids represent an early branch in cephalopod evolution, one that found a successful niche and maintained it for millions of years. The development of their extraordinary sensory systems tells another evolutionary story. Those massive eyes evolved specifically for life in the dim depths, where every photon of bioluminescent light carries crucial information. The size of their eyes isn't just scaling up from smaller species. It represents a fundamental adaptation to an environment where vision operates at the very limits of possibility. Their distributed nervous system, with its emphasis on arm-based intelligence, reflects the ancient cephalopod solution to the problem of rapid response in a soft-bodied animal. Unlike vertebrates, which centralize their nervous systems in protected spinal columns, cephalopods distributed intelligence throughout their bodies, creating creatures that could literally think with their limbs. The biochemical adaptations that allow giant squids to thrive in the deep ocean also connect them to their evolutionary past. Their copper-based blood chemistry is an ancient trait, shared with many other mollusks. Rather than evolving new solutions for deep-sea life, giant squids refined existing systems, optimizing ancient biochemistry for modern challenges. Genetic studies reveal that giant squids are relatively ancient as species go, with lineages that may stretch back millions of years. This evolutionary stability suggests they found a successful ecological niche early and have maintained it with minimal change. In the stable environment of the deep ocean, evolutionary pressure for dramatic change remains minimal. The relationship between giant squids and their smaller relatives reveals interesting patterns of convergent evolution. Many of the adaptations we see in giant squids, from bioluminescent displays to sophisticated hunting techniques, appear independently in smaller deep-sea cephalopods. The deep ocean seems to consistently favor similar solutions to the challenges of life in the abyss. Their position in the cephalopod family tree places them as relatively basal members of the decapod squids, the group that includes all 10-armed cephalopods. This means that many of their characteristics represent ancestral traits rather than derived innovations, making them living windows into the evolutionary history of their entire lineage. The giant squid represents both evolutionary conservatism and innovation, an ancient lineage that found success in the deep ocean and has maintained that success for millions of years through gradual refinement rather than dramatic change. In the frigid waters around Antarctica, another giant lurks in the depths, one that may actually eclipse the giant squid in both size and ferocity. Meet Mercenicotius hamiltoni, the colossal squid, a creature so recently discovered that science is still unraveling the mysteries of its existence and its relationship to its more famous cousin. The colossal squid remained unknown to science until 1925, when the first specimens were found in the stomachs of sperm whales. For decades, scientists assumed these fragments belonged to unusually robust giant squids. It wasn't until 1981 that researchers realized they were looking at an entirely different species, one adapted for life in the coldest, most challenging waters on Earth. Where giant squids are built for speed and agility, colossal squids are engineered for power and endurance. Their mantles are broader and more muscular, giving them a stockier, more robust appearance. While giant squids rely on swift tentacle strikes and rapid retreat, colossal squids appear built for prolonged struggles with large prey in the nutrient-rich but frigid Antarctic waters. The most striking difference lies in their armament. While giant squids possess hooks only on their tentacle clubs, colossal squids have hooks running along both their arms and tentacles. These hooks can rotate 360 degrees and are sharp enough to pierce whale skin. Some of these hooks measure over 1 inch in length, making them formidable weapons for both attack and defense. Size comparisons between the two species remain contentious, largely because so few intact colossal squid specimens have been recovered. The largest colossal squid found to date, caught by Antarctic fishermen in 2007, measured 33 feet in total length, but weighed over 1,100 pounds. This suggests a much more massive build than giant squids of comparable length. Estimates based on beak size and hook dimensions suggest colossal squids might reach even greater proportions. Some scientists propose maximum lengths approaching 50 feet, with weights potentially exceeding 2,000 pounds. If these estimates prove accurate, the colossal squid would claim the title of largest invertebrate on Earth. Their habitat preferences differ significantly from giant squids. While giant squids inhabit temperate and tropical deep waters worldwide, colossal squids appear restricted to the Southern Ocean around Antarctica. They seem particularly associated with the Ross Sea and adjacent waters, areas characterized by extremely cold temperatures and seasonal ice coverage. The hunting strategies of colossal squids remain largely mysterious, but their anatomy suggests a different approach than their giant cousins. Their broader mantles and more muscular build imply they might be ambush predators capable of tackling larger, more powerful prey. The rotating hooks suggest they're built for gripping rather than striking, possibly engaging in prolonged wrestling matches with their victims. Their relationship with sperm whales appears even more contentious than that of giant squids. Sperm whales that hunt in Antarctic waters often bear distinctive hook scars that can only come from colossal squids. These marks suggest epic battles in the crushing depths, with the whale's superior size and endurance eventually winning out over the squid's hooks and strength. The colossal squid's eyes, while large, don't appear to reach the extreme proportions of giant squid eyes. This might reflect different hunting strategies or habitat preferences. In the clearer waters of the Antarctic, perhaps, massive eyes provide less advantage than they do in the more particle-rich waters where giant squids hunt. Reproductive strategies likely differ between the species as well, though direct observations of colossal squid reproduction remain non-existent. Their restricted habitat and apparent lower population density suggest they might have evolved different mating systems than giant squids, possibly with more elaborate courtship behaviors or different seasonal timing. The discovery of colossal squids has revolutionized our understanding of large cephalopod diversity, rather than one species of giant squid dominating the world's oceans. We now know that different regions support different giant cephalopods, each adapted to local conditions and prey communities. Climate change poses particular threats to colossal squids, as their Antarctic habitat faces rapid warming and ice loss. Their restricted range makes them potentially more vulnerable than the globally distributed giant squids, raising conservation concerns for a species we're only beginning to understand. The colossal squid reminds us that the ocean still holds surprises, that even in the 21st century, creatures of mythical proportions remain hidden in the depths, waiting for science to reveal their secrets. The challenge of studying a creature that lives miles beneath the ocean's surface, in crushing darkness and pressure, has driven marine scientists to develop increasingly sophisticated technologies. Each breakthrough in our understanding of giant squids has come hand in hand with advances in deep-sea exploration, creating a technological arms race between human curiosity and the ocean's secrecy. Traditional research methods proved hopelessly inadequate for studying giant squids in their natural habitat. Surface nets couldn't reach their depths, and the few specimens that washed ashore were already dying or dead, their delicate tissues damaged beyond useful study. Scientists needed to develop entirely new approaches to pierce the veil of the deep ocean. The development of remotely operated vehicles revolutionized deep-sea research. These robot explorers, connected to surface ships by fiber optic cables, can dive to depths that would instantly crush human observers. Modern ROVs like Jason and Hercules carry sophisticated camera systems, manipulator arms, and sampling equipment, allowing researchers to observe and interact with giant squids from thousands of miles away. Autonomous underwater vehicles represent the next evolution in deep-sea exploration. These untethered robots can dive deeper and stay longer than their cable-connected cousins, following pre-programmed missions or adapting their behavior based on what they encounter. AOVRs equipped with artificial intelligence can recognize giant squid silhouettes and adjust their approach accordingly, maximizing the chances of successful observation. Bait camera systems have proven particularly effective for giant squid research. These specialized devices combine high-definition cameras with carefully designed lures that appeal to giant squid curiosity. The key breakthrough came with the realization that traditional white lights scared away deep-sea creatures. Switching to red lights, invisible to most deep-sea animals, allowed for much longer and more natural observations. Environmental DNA sampling has opened entirely new windows into giant squid ecology. By filtering seawater and analyzing the genetic material it contains, researchers can detect the presence of giant squids without ever seeing the animals themselves. This technique reveals distribution patterns, population estimates, and even dietary information from the genetic signatures left behind in the water. Satellite tagging attempts have met with limited success due to the giant squid's deep water lifestyle and delicate physiology. However, advances in tag miniaturization and extended battery life continue to push the boundaries of what's possible. Pop-up satellite tags, designed to release from the animal after a predetermined time, offer hope for tracking giant squid movements across ocean basins. Acoustic monitoring has revealed unexpected aspects of giant squid behavior. Hydrophone arrays deployed in deep water have detected low-frequency sounds that correlate with known giant squid habitat. These acoustic signatures might represent communication calls, feeding sounds, or simply the noise of large animals moving through water. Genetic analysis of tissue samples has revolutionized our understanding of giant squid population structure and evolutionary history. Modern DNA sequencing techniques can extract detailed genetic information from tiny tissue samples, revealing relationships between populations separated by thousands of miles and millions of years of evolution. Citizen science initiatives have dramatically expanded the reach of giant squid research. Projects like iNaturalist allow beach walkers to photograph and report stranded specimens, while online platforms enable volunteers to help analyze thousands of hours of ROV footage. This distributed approach to research multiplies the eyes and hands available for data collection and analysis, Advanced imaging techniques continue to reveal new details about giant squid anatomy and behavior. High-speed cameras can capture the explosive extension of feeding tentacles, while specialized underwater microscopes reveal the intricate structure of sucker hooks and chromatophore cells. Computer modeling and simulation have become essential tools for understanding giant squid ecology. Researchers use mathematical models to predict migration patterns, estimate population sizes, and explore the potential impacts of climate change on giant squid habitat. These virtual experiments allow scientists to test hypotheses that would be impossible to investigate in the real ocean. Machine learning algorithms now assist in identifying giant squids in video footage and photographs. These artificial intelligence systems can process vast amounts of visual data far faster than human researchers, flagging potential sightings for detailed analysis and helping to automate the tedious work of data processing. The integration of multiple research platforms creates comprehensive pictures of giant squid ecology, combining data from ROVs, AOVs, satellite tags, environmental DNA and acoustic monitoring allows researchers to track these elusive creatures across multiple dimensions of space and time, slowly assembling a complete portrait of life in the abyss. Each technological advance brings us closer to understanding these remarkable creatures, but also reveals how much more there is to learn about the giants that glide through our planet's last unexplored frontier. In the perpetual darkness of the deep ocean, where sound travels poorly and touch requires dangerous proximity, giant squids have evolved a sophisticated language of chemistry. Their world is one of invisible messages written in molecules where every chemical trace tells a story of food, danger, or opportunity. The ocean itself serves as a vast communication network carrying chemical signals across enormous distances. Giant squids navigate this molecular landscape with arms that function as both hands and tongues, constantly tasting the water around them for information. Each of their 8 arms contains thousands of chemoreceptors capable of detecting specific molecules at concentrations so low they would be undetectable to human instruments. Bioluminescence represents perhaps the most dramatic aspect of their chemical communication system. Giant squids produce light through the same basic chemical reaction used by fireflies, but adapted for the crushing pressures and near-freezing temperatures of the deep ocean. The reaction involves luciferin, a light-producing molecule, and luciferase, an enzyme that catalyzes the reaction. When these chemicals combine in the presence of oxygen, they create cold light with almost no heat waste. The chromatophore system that creates their spectacular color displays operates through a completely different chemical mechanism. These specialized cells contain pigment granules that can be dispersed or concentrated through muscular contractions controlled by the nervous system. The speed of these changes, faster than human speech, suggests that color patterns might represent a rapid visual language flashing across their skin. Chemical trails in the water provide navigation information that allows giant squids to track prey across vast distances. When a fish is injured or stressed, it releases specific amino acids and other compounds that giant squids can follow like bloodhounds following a scent. These chemical gradients can persist in the water for hours, creating highways of information that guide hunting behavior. Pheromones likely play crucial roles in giant squid reproduction, though the specific compounds remain largely unknown. Males and females probably release chemical signals that advertise their reproductive readiness, species identity, and individual quality. In the vast emptiness of the deep ocean, these chemical beacons might be the only way solitary individuals can locate potential mates. The ammonia that fills giant squid tissues serves multiple chemical functions beyond simple buoyancy control. This compound, toxic to most organisms, may also serve as a chemical defense mechanism, making giant squid flesh unpalatable to many potential predators. The concentration of ammonia varies throughout their bodies, suggesting sophisticated biochemical regulation systems. Giant squids also participate in the ocean's broader chemical cycles. When they die, their bodies release massive amounts of nutrients into the nutrient-poor deep ocean. This chemical legacy supports entire ecosystems of scavengers and decomposers, demonstrating how individual animals serve as chemical processing plants in the larger oceanic system. The pH levels of deep ocean water influence how chemical signals propagate and persist. Giant squids have evolved their communication systems to work optimally in the slightly alkaline conditions of their habitat, but ocean acidification from climate change, threatens to disrupt these delicate chemical balances. Symbiotic bacteria living on and within giant squids contribute their own chemical signatures to the complex molecular environment surrounding these animals. These bacterial partners may help process toxins, produce essential nutrients, or even contribute to bioluminescent displays through their own light-producing capabilities. Chemical communication extends to predator-prey relationships as well. Giant squids can detect the chemical signatures of sperm whales, their primary predators, allowing them to avoid dangerous encounters. Conversely, sperm whales may track the chemical trails left by giant squids, turning the deep ocean into an invisible battlefield of molecular hide and seek. The study of giant squid chemical ecology remains in its infancy, limited by the technical challenges of collecting and analyzing chemical samples from the deep ocean. Advanced spectrometry techniques are beginning to reveal the molecular complexity of deep-sea chemical communication, but much of this underwater chemical language remains as mysterious as the creatures that speak it. In this realm where chemistry replaces sound and light as the primary medium of communication, giant squids have evolved into master chemists, reading and writing messages in the universal language of molecules. Despite decades of research and technological advances, giant squids remain among the most enigmatic creatures on Earth. The vastness of their deep-sea habitat and the challenges of studying animals that live under crushing pressure in perpetual darkness mean that fundamental questions about their biology and ecology remain unanswered. Population dynamics represent one of the greatest mysteries surrounding giant squids. Scientists have no reliable estimates of how many giant squids exist in the world's oceans. Are there thousands scattered across the deep sea, or hundreds of thousands? The sparse nature of sightings and specimens makes population assessment nearly impossible. With current methods, we don't know if giant squid numbers are stable, declining, or fluctuating in response to environmental changes. Their exact geographic distribution remains surprisingly unclear. While giant squid specimens have been found in most of the world's oceans, the gaps in our knowledge are enormous. Vast areas of the deep ocean have never been systematically surveyed for giant squids. We suspect they inhabit suitable deep-water habitat worldwide, but confirming their presence requires expensive, time-intensive research expeditions. Climate change impacts on giant squid populations represent a critical unknown. As ocean temperatures rise and chemistry changes, how will these ancient predators respond? Their prey species are already shifting distributions in response to warming waters. Ocean acidification affects the calcium carbonate structures that many of their prey organisms depend on. Yet we have no baseline data to measure changes in giant squid populations or distribution patterns. The mystery of juvenile giant squids continues to puzzle researchers. Despite decades of searching, very few young specimens have ever been found. Where do giant squid eggs develop? What depths do juveniles inhabit? What do they eat during their rapid growth phase? The absence of young giant squids from research collections suggests they either live in habitats we haven't explored or develop in ways we haven't anticipated. Mating behavior remains largely hypothetical. While we understand the basic mechanics of cephalopod reproduction, we've never observed giant squids mating in the wild. Do they engage in complex courtship displays? How do males and females find each other in the vast emptiness of the deep ocean? The brief encounters documented by researchers have provided no insight into their reproductive behaviors. Social interactions, if they exist, remain completely unknown. Are giant squids purely solitary, or do they occasionally interact with members of their own species? Some evidence suggests that multiple giant squids might feed on the same whale carcasses, but whether this represents social behavior or simply convergence on a food source remains unclear. Their lifespan estimates are based on limited data from a few specimens. While most evidence suggests they live only 1 to 2 years, this seems remarkably short for such large, complex animals. Could some giant squids live longer under optimal conditions? Do growth rates vary geographically or seasonally? Without long-term studies of living populations, these questions remain unanswered. Deep-sea mining poses emerging threats that we can't properly assess without better understanding of giant squid ecology. Proposed mining operations target the same deep-sea environments where giant squids hunt and live. The noise, sediment disruption and habitat destruction from mining could devastate giant squid populations, but we lack the baseline data needed to predict or measure these impacts. Communication systems beyond the visual color displays remain largely theoretical. Do giant squids use low-frequency sounds for long-distance communication? Can they detect electrical fields like some sharks? Their sophisticated nervous systems suggest complex sensory capabilities, but documenting these abilities in living animals remains technically challenging. The role of parasites and diseases in giant squid populations is virtually unknown. Surface's examination of specimens reveals various parasitic organisms, but we don't understand how these relationships affect giant squid health, behavior, or survival. In the pathogen-rich environment of the deep ocean, disease resistance might be crucial for survival. Migration patterns, if they exist, remain unmapped. Do giant squids follow seasonal movements of their prey? Do they migrate between feeding and breeding areas? Satellite tagging technology might eventually answer these questions, but current success rates with giant squid tagging remain disappointingly low. Perhaps most fundamentally, we still don't understand what limits giant squid distribution and abundance. Is it temperature, pressure, prey availability, or some combination of factors? Understanding these ecological constraints is essential for predicting how giant squid populations might respond to environmental changes. The giant squid continues to guard its secrets jealously, reminding us that even in our technologically advanced age, the deep ocean remains one of Earth's last frontiers. The giant squid exists in a realm that humanity has barely touched, yet our activities increasingly threaten the delicate balance of deep-sea ecosystems. Protecting these magnificent creatures requires us to embrace a precautionary approach to ocean stewardship, safeguarding habitats we've only begun to understand for species we've barely started to study. Deep-sea mining represents the most immediate threat to giant squid habitat. Companies and nations eye the abyssal plains where polymetallic nodules lie scattered like treasure across the seafloor. These potato-sized lumps contain cobalt, nickel, and rare earth elements, essential for modern electronics and renewable energy technologies, but harvesting them requires scraping vast areas of seafloor, destroying habitats that took millions of years to develop. The scale of proposed mining operations staggers the imagination. A single mining site might cover hundreds of square miles, with massive collectors crawling across the bottom like underwater combines, sucking up sediment and everything living within it. The sediment plumes created by this activity could drift for hundreds of miles, smothering filter-feeding organisms and disrupting the food webs that giant squids depend on. Noise pollution from mining operations poses another serious concern. Giant squids rely on acute hearing to detect prey movements and predator approaches in the nearly silent deep ocean. The constant rumble of mining machinery could interfere with their ability to hunt and communicate, potentially driving them from traditional feeding areas. Industrial fishing presents more subtle but equally serious challenges. While giant squids aren't directly targeted by commercial fisheries, they depend on many species that are deep-water fishing for orange ruffy, Patagonian toothfish, and other long-lived species, removes prey that giant squids have relied on for millions of years. The collapse of deep-sea fish populations could force giant squids to travel farther for food, or switch to less nutritious alternatives. Climate change creates cascading effects throughout giant squid habitat. Rising ocean temperatures alter the distribution of their prey species, potentially forcing giant squids to follow food into unfamiliar waters. Ocean acidification affects the calcium carbonate shells and skeletons that many of their prey organisms depend on, potentially collapsing entire food webs from the bottom up. The deep scattering layer, that massive daily migration of small organisms that provides hunting opportunities for giant squids, is already showing signs of climate-related disruption. As surface waters warm, the timing and intensity of these migrations may shift, potentially leaving giant squids without their most reliable food source. Plastic pollution reaches even the deepest parts of the ocean, where giant squids might mistake floating debris for prey. Microplastics accumulate in the tissues of deep-sea organisms, potentially working their way up the food chain to giant squids. The long-term effects of plastic contamination on these animals remain unknown. But concerning, chemical pollution presents another invisible threat. Industrial chemicals, agricultural runoff, and pharmaceutical compounds eventually make their way to the deep ocean, where they can persist for decades in the cold, slow-moving waters. Giant squids, as top predators, may concentrate these toxins in their tissues, potentially affecting their reproduction, development, or survival. International cooperation remains essential for giant squid conservation because these animals recognize no political boundaries. They roam freely through international waters, beyond the jurisdiction of any single nation. Protecting them requires coordinated action through organizations like the International Seabed Authority and regional fisheries management bodies. Marine protected areas offer one of the most promising conservation tools, but establishing them in the deep ocean presents unique challenges. Unlike coastal protected areas, deep-sea reserves are difficult to monitor and enforce. However, protecting critical habitats like selenolts, hydrothermal vents, and areas with high biodiversity could provide refuges for giant squids and their prey. The precautionary principle becomes crucial when dealing with species we understand so poorly. Given our limited knowledge of giant squid population dynamics, distribution, and ecological requirements, we should err on the side of caution when making decisions that could affect their habitat. Waiting for complete scientific understanding before taking protective action could mean waiting too long. Research itself plays a vital conservation role. Every new discovery about giant squid biology, behavior, and ecology provides information needed to make informed management decisions. Supporting deep-sea research programs represents an investment in the knowledge base required for effective conservation. Public awareness and education help build political support for deep-sea conservation measures. When people understand that giant squids and other deep-sea creatures exist, they're more likely to support policies that protect them. The challenge lies in making these remote animals relevant to people who will never see them in person. The giant squid serves as an ambassador for the entire deep-sea ecosystem, a charismatic representative of a realm that harbors countless other species equally deserving of protection, but lacking the cultural recognition to capture public attention. The giant squid occupies a unique position in human culture, straddling the boundary between science and mythology, between the real and the imagined. No other animal has so thoroughly captured our collective imagination while remaining so elusive to direct study. Their tentacles have reached far beyond the ocean depths, wrapping themselves around literature, art, cinema, and the deepest corners of human consciousness. Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea established the giant squid as the ultimate sea monster in the popular imagination. His dramatic encounter between the Nautilus and a giant squid, with tentacles thick as ship masts and eyes like burning coals, set the template for countless future depictions. Verne understood that the giant squid represented something more than just a large animal. It embodied the ocean's power to humble human technology and ambition. Literary tradition has consistently portrayed giant squids as forces of nature rather than mere animals. From Herman Melville's references in Moby Dick to modern science fiction, they appear as symbols of the unknowable, the uncontrollable, the genuinely alien. Their intelligence makes them more threatening than simple predators. They think, therefore they can outwit. They plan, therefore they can surprise. They adapt, therefore they can evolve beyond our understanding. Cinema has amplified these themes, creating giant squids that dwarf even the largest real specimens. From the classic 20,000 Leagues films to modern blockbusters, movie giant squids serve as perfect antagonists because they combine intelligence with alienness. They're smart enough to be truly dangerous, but foreign enough to remain terrifying. Their fluid movement and color-changing abilities make them visually spectacular on screen. The Kraken legend has evolved alongside our scientific understanding, becoming more sophisticated as we've learned more about real cephalopods. Modern depictions often incorporate actual giant squid behaviors, bioluminescence, color changes, and distributed intelligence, making them more believable and somehow more terrifying than their purely mythological predecessors. Video games have embraced giant squids as boss monsters, creatures that require strategy and patience to defeat. Their multiple arms create complex combat scenarios, while their intelligence makes them unpredictable opponents. Game designers appreciate that giant squids can be both massive and agile, powerful and subtle, creating challenging encounters that feel both epic and intimate. Art has found inspiration in the alien beauty of giant squid anatomy. Their flowing tentacles and translucent flesh appeal to artists seeking to capture movement and grace in static media. Japanese art, with its long tradition of octopus and squid imagery, has particularly embraced the giant squid as a subject worthy of both fear and reverence. The relationship between scientific discovery and cultural mythology reveals fascinating patterns. As we've learned more about real giant squids, fictional depictions have become both more accurate and more creative. Writers and artists now incorporate actual scientific knowledge about distributed intelligence, bioluminescence, and deep-sea ecology into their fantastic creations. Children's literature has adopted gentler versions of giant squids, transforming them from monsters into mysterious but benevolent guardians of the deep. These friendlier interpretations help young readers appreciate marine life while maintaining the sense of wonder that makes giant squids so captivating. The giant squid has become a symbol for the importance of ocean conservation, representing all the unknown species that inhabit the deep sea. Environmental organizations use their image to argue for protection of marine ecosystems, understanding that people will fight to save creatures that capture their imagination. Educational programs have found that giant squids serve as perfect ambassadors for marine science. Their combination of real biology and mythological appeal makes them ideal subjects for engaging public interest in oceanography, marine biology, and conservation. They prove that reality can be as exciting as fiction. The internet age has democratized giant squid fascination, with viral videos of encounters spreading across social media platforms. Millions of people have now seen real giant squids in their natural habitat, transforming them from legendary creatures into documented animals, while somehow preserving their mystique. Modern literature continues to find new angles on giant squid mythology, exploring themes of consciousness, communication, and what it means to be intelligent in forms we don't recognize. Science fiction writers use them to examine questions about alien intelligence and the limitations of human understanding. The giant squid reminds us that monsters matter to the human psyche. They represent the unknown, the uncontrolled, the genuinely other. In a world where GPS satellites track our every movement and search engines answer our every question, giant squids preserve a space for mystery, for wonder, for the thrilling knowledge that some things remain beyond our complete understanding. And so we return to the surface, carrying with us the echoes of tentacles and time, the whisper of intelligence alien yet familiar, the reminder that our blue planet still holds wonders beyond our imagining. In following the giant squid from myth to measurement, from sailor's tale to scientific truth, we've traced a journey that mirrors our own evolution as explorers, as questioners, as beings humbled by the vastness of what we don't yet know. The giant squid endures in the crushing depths, unchanged by our newfound ability to observe them, unimpressed by our technologies and theories. They continue their ancient dance through the midnight zone, hunting with arms that think, seeing with eyes that capture light we'll never perceive, communicating in languages of color and chemistry that we're only beginning to decode. Their existence reminds us that intelligence takes forms we never expected, that consciousness might bloom in configurations we barely recognize. In a universe where we search for alien life among distant stars, we've discovered aliens in our own oceans, creatures whose very existence expands our understanding of what life can become. Perhaps the most profound gift the giant squid offers is the preservation of mystery itself. In an age of instant answers and satellite surveillance, they remain beyond our complete comprehension. They remind us that some questions are worth holding gently, that wonder thrives in the spaces between knowledge and imagination. So rest now, knowing that somewhere in the deep tentacles drift through darkness, eyes watch for movement in the void, and intelligence older than mountains continues its patient work. The abyss keeps its secret still, and that is exactly as it should be.